Ed Lane is one option of listening to the Christiansburg Magna Vista game. ESPN Southside, if you're in the Martinsville area, of course you can hear ESPNSouthside.com no matter where you are around the world. He stopped by the Sports Buffet podcast Wednesday night to preview Christiansburg and Magna Vista. Hear his thoughts about Magna Vista, about Harvey Taylor, about Joe Favero, and who does he favor. That and more with Ed Lane, Sports Buffet podcast, the host of ESPN Southside. Check out Southside Connection weekdays 4 to 6, ESPNSouthside.com.
ESPN Southside, your place to be on Friday night for the matchup of Magna Vista Christiansburg, the Region 4 Division 4 final. Ed Lane will have the call of the game on ESPN Southside. He joins me now on the Sports Buffet podcast. And Ed, I got to tell you, this is kind of a dream matchup for me. Something I've been waiting for at the beginning of the year. Two of the better teams, not only in the region but in the state, with Magna Vista and Christiansburg. How do you see this one shaking down?
You know, it's a great question, Bob. When you look at this matchup over the last 2 years, you've had two stellar quarterbacks in Harvey Taylor for Magna Vista, a guy that's played with a chip on his shoulder because at 5'8", he's not getting a lot of college interest, versus Brendan Motley, who deservedly so has a scholarship to Virginia Tech. He's clearly one of the best quarterbacks in the area and in the region. You look at these two teams, 2 losses combined over the last couple of seasons during the regular season. Last year it was Magna Vista to Franklin County. This year it was Christiansburg to Salem earlier this year. To Cave Spring earlier this year. And you look at these two teams, clearly there's a lot of talent amongst both of these squads. When I look at this contest, I think it's clearly the way everyone's expected. Two different offenses. Magna Vista is more of the spread-it out offense. They love to go for the home run ball, but they can beat you with Harvey Taylor in a good ground game. Christiansburg is a bit opposite. They run the wing T offense. They love to run misdirection and use that to set up the play-action pass. Two teams that both can beat you out of their element. For Magna Vista, they can beat you short but love to go long. And Christiansburg, a team that loves to go short in sort of a methodical cut, death by 1,000 cut, so to speak. But they too can beat you with the big play. And go in for another good ball game.
You know, one thing that's really, I don't know if weird is the right word, but a little bit odd and unusual is Magna Vista undefeated, Christiansburg, like you mentioned, with that one loss, and yet this game is in Christiansburg, and, you know, I don't think Magna Vista really had an easy schedule. I mean, maybe the Piedmont a little bit easier than the River Ridge, but I think Magna Vista comes into this game, you know, very well tested in terms of strength of schedule. Your sentiments on that?
You know, I don't think it's a far cry to say it that the Piedmont district is generally it's a struggling district, given the fact that you got 3 schools in there that when you stack them up against other schools in AA, whether it's in Division III football with Martinsville and Patrick County and Tunstall, or Division IV football with Bassett and Magna Vista, generally they're on the smaller end of the spectrum in their particular region. That said, when you look at these 3 teams, Magna Vista is a team that certainly their intentions were to have a tough non-district schedule. Heritage was a team that many people expected to be a playoff caliber team. A lot of talent out of the Lynchburg area. On most years, obviously, it was a little down for them this year with the coaching change they've got going on right now. William Fleming's another team on their schedule. Halifax was a team on their schedule. Teams that generally, when you schedule them, you expect more out of them. Fleming's hit a rough patch as well. I think the intentions were there for Franklin County, for Magna Vista rather, to play a tough schedule. But the way it ended up shaking down, the only team out of district play that really is labeled as a prominent caliber playoff team was Franklin County. Certainly they lost last week to Battlefield, but I think for Magna Vista, they didn't try to shy away from the big teams, but it just so happened to break down that they ended up playing what was deemed to be, and clearly on paper, a weaker non-district schedule. Their intentions were good, but the way it unfolded, it didn't do them any favors.
I think you've talked to all parties involved by this time, or at least have studied all parties involved. If you're Joe Favero, what worries you about Christiansburg?
You know, if I'm Joe Favero, I think there are a couple things that worry me about them. First of all, Magna Vista has been a team that has been generally going by the bend but don't break philosophy defensively, and they did it against Pulaski, which gashed them for over 250 yards on the ground. Same thing with Franklin County, which topped that 200-yard marker, and Bishop last week for Salem got to the 200-yard marker as well in rushing yards. If I'm Magna Vista, I think the biggest concern I have right now, you can make a lot of coaching adjustments, but over the course of the year, they've struggled to fully be able to shut down the run. I don't know if that's going to happen against Christiansburg, but I think if nothing else, you got to be able to play assignment football and find a way to get off the field on 3rd and 4th down. We've sort of pegged the number at 50%. If it's in the 45 to 55 range of Christiansburg's conversions on 3rd and 4th down, I think it's a push. If it's above that, Christiansburg gets the nod. If Magna Vista can keep it really even anything below 50% on 3rd and 4th down conversions, I think that's the big thing. But I think it all harkens back to the thing for Magna Vista, whereas Christiansburg's a very good team running the football. They've used it to set up a play-action pass. And unlike a lot of the other teams Magna Vista has faced this year, they run these sort of run-based offenses. Christiansburg's got the athletes to be able to give you fits, both in power running and with the speed.
In terms of a defensive standpoint, how tough of a night can Christiansburg maybe make it for Harvey Taylor?
You know, it's interesting. It's a great question. You look at the last couple of ball games for Magna Vista, and teams have done two things to Magna Vista. They tried to zone in on Harvey Taylor and basically take away Harvey as the running threat. And the other thing they've tried to do is they've been willing to give up a short to intermediate passing game to try and take away the long plays to Deshaun Penn, the big wide receiver, number 161, and to Jalen Hayden. They've given up, and they've been willing to say, we're not going to let Harvey beat us on the ground or the wide receivers beat us deep. Magna Vista understands that philosophy, but I think that's the big thing if you're Magna Vista right now about the Christiansburg defense. Other teams have tried to set up the recipe, and for Magna Vista, they've improved in it, but it still has been a little bit of a work in progress, just getting the guys to buy into a new philosophy. Maybe not changing your offensive bread and butter of the spread, but the willingness that, hey, 5, 10, 15-yard chunks can be good. You don't have to get everything on the big play.
I think if these two teams meet 10 times, it's 5-5 or 6-4 one way. They're only going to have one that's really going to make a difference, though. With that being said, how do you see it shaking out for Friday in terms of result?
You know, it's a good question, Bob, again, and I think that's the golden question everyone wants answered. I think there's three factors that we've sort of pegged in this ball game if Magna Vista is going to win, and I view them as a slight underdog in this contest. Obviously, Las Vegas hopefully is not putting lines on high school football, but I'm sure someone out there might be able to do that and find a line if you're really looking to bet, though I don't encourage it on high school sports.
Nor do I.
Yeah, exactly. For the record, let's get that clear.
Yeah, absolutely. Entertainment purposes only.
Yeah, exactly. But for entertainment purposes only, usually the home team gets 3 points, and I give one extra one to Christiansburg just because they've been a little bit deeper, and I think they're a little more multifaceted offensively than Magna Vista. There are three things, though, that Magna Vista needs to try and erase that and neutralize it. I don't worry about this team coming in overhyped because they've been here before. I'm not super worried about the rust from the Thanksgiving break. That was an issue last year, but having done that before, they understand the need to make those sacrifices, and especially a senior-laden team. They've got a lot of them. I think for Magna Vista, if they're going to win, the first thing is the turnover margin. Both teams have feasted on turnovers, but when you're a road underdog, you've got to be able to not just have an even turnover margin, you've got to create them. We've sort of pegged it as a +2 turnover differential. Magna Vista creating at least 2 more turnovers than they give up to Christiansburg, whether that's 2-0, 3-1, 3-0, whatever. That's Magna Vista's key number one. I think key number two is third down conversions defensively. How do you get off the field on third and fourth down? If you can keep it 50% or under if you're Magna Vista, you got a chance to win. If that creeps above 50%, Christiansburg's got enough layers offensively to win this ball game. I think the third thing for Magna Vista is, can they take that intermediate route? Teams have been selling out when they go out in the backfield to try and stop Harvey Taylor and have been dropping defensive backs deep. That leaves a lot of room, a 5 to 10 yard cushion. If Magna Vista can use their speedy receivers on a lot of underneath patterns, where I think they have an advantage just in terms of athleticism, they win this game. All that being said, I think there are a lot of factors that have to play into Magna Vista's advantage. I give a very slight nod to Christiansburg as a favorite, but again, you mentioned it, 5-5 if these teams meet 10 times. A lot of evenness out there. I think Magna Vista's got they're playing with the a chip on their shoulder. That said, I lean Christiansburg, and I sort of stick with my 4-point Las Vegas odd favorite for this game.
I love the numbers, Ed. We might have to call you next year for a numbers game at most. But
by the way, for the record, I have no advocation of betting on high school sports. We totally discourage it.
Absolutely, entertainment purposes. I mean, but it does give you seriously though, it does give you kind of a measure of how close the game should be, which I think people are always interested in. I'll conclude with this. As always, we appreciate the time. Look forward to keeping this going during basketball season, spring. We'll find something to talk about. But can this game be a situation to where the winner could have so much taken out of them just because it could be such a close game that they're spent for the semi or the final?
I think it definitely could. I think the one concern that I would have is obviously that in a game like this, I expect it to be close. I would be willing to bet you're going to get two teams, again, topping that 30-point mark in this contest. Both of them like to score, and especially if it gets going early, this could turn into a shootout. By the way, for the record, it's good for our station, more commercial breaks. But in reality, I think you're dead on. These teams have been eyeing each other since the end of last year. Clearly, Magna Vista had their season ended by Christiansburg, and you heard it from Brendan Motley, the Christiansburg quarterback. And when we spoke with their head coach, Tim Cromer, about this contest, they said, while they have both teams have done a good job of the one game at a time mindset, in the back of their heads, they've been having their eyes on this game. I think with that, you get a hard-fought game, but like you said, you can easily tax yourself, especially given the emotion that both teams, I think, are going to put into this game.
I don't advocate gambling, once again, at least not on high school events, but I think you're looking at a 50-point total, well within reach for both squads total.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I'd even go so far as to say I could easily see this topping the 60 to 65-point mark. I mean, I think both these teams have such good offenses, and both these teams have defenses that can be good at times, but can be scored upon at times. And when you have two offenses that can score at will, two defenses that can give up points at will, I clearly think we're in for a shootout.
Yeah, I don't think because you get scored on by Christiansburg or Magna Vista, your defense should feel, like a letdown.
No, not at all. I mean, you got Brendan Motley. There's a reason he's going to Tech. You got Harvey Taylor, a guy that at 5'8", I think if a college were to give him a try at running back, it would be a great service because he's got such good instincts. I think you look at these two teams, and it goes beyond the quarterbacks. Two good offensive lines in this contest that have really matured over the year, having to deal with a lot of departures and a lot of skill position talent as well. I think when you do that, ultimately, offenses know where they're going, defenses don't. And if you got two well-oiled offenses, they know where they're going. I'll give the advantage to them.
Ed, as always, we appreciate the time. We'll do it again very, very soon, and definitely be listening on ESPN Southside Friday night. Kickoff, I believe, 7 or 7:30?
7:30 kickoff. We're actually doing a special Steve's Easy Marathon and Telly Tailgate show for that. We'll have a 6:30 airtime for us to give you. We'll have interviews with Harvey Taylor, Tim Cromer, with Joe Bavera of Magna Vista as well, and certainly some breakdown of the contest as well. I think we're in for a treat again.
I think we are too, and always a treat when Ed Lane comes on the Sports Buffet. Ed, appreciate the time.
My pleasure. Thank you, Bob, in this season of Thanksgiving.
Ed Lane on the Sports Buffet podcast.